Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Ace on Music. I'm joined as always by Mark and Sean, and we have Emma behind the board as well. So, this week I thought it would be interesting for us to discuss something that has probably had more impact on the music industry in the last 20 or so odd years than almost anything else, and that's this concept of streaming music, whether it be through services like YouTube and Spotify or the many other ones that are out there. And this is one of the most divisive topics in this industry. I mean, it's a love hate thing with artists. I mean, there are advantages to the streaming and there are disadvantages, but streaming in general has been the vehicle that has led us down the path of less physical sales and more digital consumption of music over the last number of years. And whether or not that is a good or a bad thing is left up for debate, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Now, the traditional model of the recording industry pre 2000s was that an artist would put out an album and they would sell X number of units. You know, in the case of, so even with some of the artists that I represent in the 70s and 80s and things like that, they were selling millions of copies of a record and making large amounts of monies off of that. But in this day and age, you don't sell millions of copies. In fact, it was one of the biggest revelations that I came into was a number of years ago when you realize that an artist who sells maybe 50 or 100,000 units of an album is going to be number one on the charts. It's just the way it works these days. People don't physically go buy CDs or anything like that. I mean, vinyl has kind of taken over the market as far as the novelty of it. But the vast majority of music is now consumed through streaming services. And the way that these services work is either you are having to endure ads while the content is being played and the platform generates revenue doing that, or they ask the people to pay a subscription fee on a monthly basis or an annual basis or however they do it. And then you get this whole concept of streams. How many streams? In other words, how many times does your song get played on these platforms? And then what these platforms like Spotify or YouTube do is they then pay you a certain an agreed upon fee, excuse me, based on however some fee that they've negotiated with the labels or whatever. And when you take a label like Spotify, it is not a penny a song or a dime a song or whatever. It's fractions of a penny every time it's played. So you literally have to have millions of listens of your song in order to start generating what we would consider to be decent amounts of revenue. But and then, of course, that revenue also has to get split with your record label because they're going to want their cut of this money as well. So I know, especially a lot of older school bands really look on things like Spotify and YouTube as the enemy and as the devil and how it's ruining the music industry. But in reality, there are some really strong truisms that we have to look at here. First of all, it's here to stay. It's not like streaming is going to go away. It's not like you can, stamp your feet or bang on the table with your fist. It's not going away. So we have to figure out how to use it as a tool like we use anything else. So, but, the thing that a lot of people don't really seem to appreciate in this day and age, and we've talked about this on other shows, and you and I have talked about this, and Mark as well, many times, is that in today's day and age in the music industry, albums are lost leaders. When a band makes a record, it's not because they're hoping to get rich off the record. I mean, it would be nice, but that's just not what they're about anymore. A new album is here to give the band an excuse to go onto the road and play, and that's where they really make their money, off of ticket sales, off of merchandise sales, meet and greet sales, etc., etc. So the big goal that we have with any album that we make right now is just seeing if we can generate enough revenue off of it so that it pays for itself. because it's still not a cheap affair to make records in this day and age. So I know that I was a little bit late coming to streaming just because it's, I was very fortunate that early on I had a friend who ran these tech conferences here in LA where she would organize people of like-minded industries to get together and almost like make these social meet and greet things to try and generate synergy between them. And one day she had the guy, Daniel Elk, who went on to form Spotify, and I had an evening's conversation with him, and he was very interested in talking to me because, it's all about content for them. They were just they were just starting out at the time. They wanted to make relationships with band managers, especially to try and convince them to allow their artists to allow the material onto their platform. But and it was something that we were pretty hesitant about at first because we couldn't really see the big picture, as what we were losing was the revenue that we were experiencing from the physical product.
Yeah.
But the market changes as to what people want.
Right.
And when those services became available, it was going to happen whether you want it. YouTube has some ridiculous amount of new content that's uploaded to that platform every day, 24,000 hours or something like that every day.
A lot of people didn't understand that back when streaming like Spotify was just starting out, there was a lot of piracy and a lot of that going on, and distribution problems and people just ripping off music. And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Spotify built on helping out music artists to get them out of the bootleg hands of people just downloading them illegally and getting them some kind of organization to where they could get some credit,
Well,
that was supposedly, that's how I thought of it as a platform. I didn't think it was going to go the route it did now.
Well, I'm not naive enough to think that anybody who's out there to try and make money is doing it for the good of whatever.
They're
out to make money.
Yeah.
But the reality is that it was difficult to adjust your thinking. The same thing happened back in the early 2000s when you had Napster and you started having the whole MP3 thing and file sharing and that whole concept, where the record industry dug its heels in and fought it hook, line, and sinker and really didn't want anything to do with it. But the market does what it does, and either you adapt or you die, and a lot of them died. And a lot of the controversy about Spotify and YouTube and all this is not so much about the fact that streaming exists now. It's the reality. It's just the way it's going to be.
Right.
The question is how much the artist gets as compensation for their music being played on this platform. And the thing that most people don't understand is you take a platform like Spotify, and of all the money that they're generating from subscriptions or ads or however they're generating their money, they pay out about 75% of their revenue in artist royalties. So they're working on a very thin margin of revenue in what they're doing. Now, there are some big advantages to having something like Spotify as well. Now, you've been with me long enough to see this transition where, even 10 years ago when one of our bands would come out with a new album, the label would, in general, we pick a single to start the ball rolling that's going to get released to the public. And even then, that single would usually get pressed into a CD, like a single track CD, that then they maybe print 1,000 of it, and they get sent out to all the radio stations and so that those places will play it. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. Everything's done digitally. You can send the track, and there's been some other wonderful innovations there. Like it always used to scare the crap out of me when we would have a new record, and you want to get the buzz going from the press, but that as soon as you have that product out of your hands, whether it's in the pressing plant or if it's in the hands of PR people or in the hands of journalists, even if you ask them, do not share this, they're going to share it.
Right.
And every album gets bootlegged as soon as that happens out there on the various things. So, there's a streaming service now where what we can do is we can set up the album in such a way that I can, for example, send you an email that says, okay, here's your link to download the album. You can listen to it. But every one of those tracks is watermarked so that if it ends up somewhere in the world, I can literally just download that file, run it through the software, and it says, oh, well, that watermark belongs to Sean Baldwin.
Right.
You can go kick his ass for
Right.
releasing it to the world, So, but when you have something like Spotify, the whole thing changes now. Everybody, you release a track to begin, a month or so out or 2 months out, and then you do another one a month out, and you do one on the day of release, and so it's all digital. But it doesn't cost me, if I'm going to release a track through Spotify, it costs me nothing as far as physically making that product. I literally upload the file to Spotify, and now it's there for the world to consume. And if I have 100 million streams on a song, it costs me personally as much as one stream of a song, because there's no cost in making all of the copies that get listened to.
That's true.
The one area that is always difficult to deal with these days is there are certain genres of music that groove to streaming more than others.
Right.
Now, you and I, we're big fans of classic rock and harder rock, metal, and things like that. And by coincidence, those genres tend to still delve into physical product more than a lot of other ones. So, that being said, it was a transition for us to get our artists to get on board with the streaming ideals. But now that it's basically it's too big a thing to fight anymore, But
Right.
even wrap your head around this for a moment. When the whole MP3 controversy started with Napster and all that stuff, and the labels were digging in, Apple saw an opportunity there, and they created the Apple iTunes Store, and it became the biggest music outlet in the world for quite a few years there, where they were selling 50 billion MP3s a year, and there was all this money being generated. That entire store is shut down now because people just don't. Why would you go and pay $9.99 to download this record from Apple iTunes Store when you can go to Spotify and click a button and listen to it for free?
Or YouTube and watch a lyric video.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
that baffled me. Like when that was going on, I'm like, wow, people were buying it though, and it was pretty popular. And I always paid for it because I felt like I owed it to the artist that I listened to. But it was like, who's going to keep doing that? I'm just, because I'm older and I think that way. The next generation's not even, going to pay for any of that. So,
well, Mark, you've been in this industry as long as we have, and you saw it from a different aspect, from the legal aspect. What is your whole take on the streaming situation?
Well, Ace, a couple of quick thoughts. It's sort of fun from a legal perspective to look at what happened with Taylor Swift and others, and the sort of as streaming was getting going. But I do have a quick comment. Yeah, there's a small percentage of the amount paid at 0.0005 cents per stream, which equates, I think, ballpark to about 250 or 300 streams per dollar. As a musician, in my entire career, getting some radio play, particularly out of the Philadelphia market, my ASCAP and BMI revenues totaled zero. And the reason why it totaled zero is because there were these complex formulas. One of the performing rights societies would sample, and I never came up on the sample, which meant I was never entitled to a piece of the pie. And then the other performing rights society did their calculation differently, and I never came up as part of their pie. And so while streaming has had an impact on many artists, the majority of the artists of the world are now able to achieve revenue that they would never have been entitled to before, for what it's worth. I know it's not enough to make a living. I know it's really complicated. I know when Olivia Rodrigo, gets 1 billion downloads, that is the most ever and is a great living. And I know most of the artists are not in that position, or they have to get a whole lot. But it was never good. The way radio worked was it benefited a handful of artists at the detriment of everybody else, who all paid fees into that pot and never got a penny back. And so I don't look at streaming like it's a problem. It's music's always been for the big boys, and the little is suffered. It's just the way it works. So I think streaming is an opportunity in that sense. It takes away from CD sales, that's for sure. Nothing we could do about that. The markets have changed. We've covered that on other episodes as well, for other ways artists can achieve revenue. From a streaming perspective, the incredible thing about this is it's just a license. It's the same license that Starbucks, when they wanted to avoid ASCAP and BMI fees, the same license that Starbucks went ahead. They directly licensed content in order to make sure that they had the right to do it, and they were able to cut out all other revenue streams. And in the beginning of that, the artists actually fared very well, because that license was not bad. It was a pretty good license, way more than they would have gotten had Starbucks just played that music and paid their ASCAP and BMI fees. And so it's a license deal. The artist has the right to license it to whomever they'd like, and as a result, I actually think Spotify has had a positive. Spotify and the others have had a positive impact on the average artist.
I agree 100%. I mean, as we've said previously, it bears repeating at this point, is that in this day and age, the albums that artists put out are designed to generate interest in having this band go on the road. You have a legacy act, even in a legacy act, like say Kiss, or in my case Uriah Heep or whatever, they have a formidable catalog that they can call on. They're certainly going to play a vast majority of that catalog when they go on tour and do their world tours. But the press is not really all that interested in talking to you or anything like that if all that you got is another tour. Unless it's some landmark tour, like the Eagles reformed 20 years after they broke up or whatever. But basically, if we put out a record, it's literally a lost leader. It gives us the opportunity to talk to journalists, or have our artists talk to journalists about what's going on with the band, and people start seeing the name all over the place, and they go, yeah, I really dig that band. And when they see the tickets go on sale, they'll go buy one and go experience it. But in my opinion, it took us a while to see this, but streaming has really been a powerful tool in our arsenal of weapons to advance our artists. And that is that if I get somebody interested, say it's a much different beast, even when it comes to journalists, to be able to say, we want to do an interview with so and so, can we hear the new record? Yeah, go to Spotify, click on it, and it's free and you can hear it. That it's a real powerful tool. And also, people are, if somebody has a Spotify or access to YouTube or Spotify or whatever, and for whatever reason, maybe they read one of those articles that the journalist wrote or whatever about this new album that they're doing, they're going to be more likely to just quickly go onto Spotify and say, well, I'm going to give that a try. There's literally nothing for them to lose. If they click on the new Uriah Heep album, they can listen to it, and it's not going to cost them anything. And so they're going to give it a chance, more likely to give it a chance than say if they had to go out and spend the $14.99 or whatever to buy a CD, or $10.99 to download it from Apple iTunes or whatever.
Right.
So I know that you particularly are a massive audiophile. Mm-hmm. The sound quality of everything seems to dominate your life.
Well, I've listened to this, type of music for so many years. I'm just a music fanatic. I just like listening to that. But, going back to what you're talking about, to me, streaming services is a battle of entitlement. This is how I look at it. You got the artist, you got the streaming service, and then the customer that listens to it. And everyone has a different way of what they're entitled to, and I think they need to come up with a situation that benefits all three of those platforms: the artist, streaming service, and the customer. Right now it's all, to me, it's just a little jumbled up right now. It hasn't really sorted itself out, but we get to listen to whatever we want. But going back to what you're asking me about paying for music, I mean, I like listening to clear, nice music. I can't listen to it in one speaker unless it's something I'm in the shower or whatever, but yeah.
So that was the point I was going to get at. You're a real audiophile. You really have gone through, we have friends like that too. I have friends who have spent thousands of dollars setting up their audio enjoyment center, if you like.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Spotify or YouTube get a little bit maligned about is the quality
yeah.
of the audio. And now I know that you do listen to Spotify and that you use it.
Yeah.
So,
well, mainly Amazon HD because of the better sounding platform.
okay, that's a good example. Amazon, their music service came up with an HD version which had higher quality audio files for a better audio experience, and you pay a premium for that and all that, which I think is a great idea. I mean, that's definitely where it's going to go.
Yeah, and it even tells you what quality you're playing at depending on your connection to your internet too, which is kind of cool. But you're talking to somebody. Look, I don't know. Do you remember when regular radio went to HD radio with the better quality?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Didn't really catch on, but yeah.
well, I still have the HD receiver to transmit regular radio into HD because they do like radio stations like KLOS and the main radio stations here in LA. They still have the HD connection, so I actually still listen to the radio with an HD.
I'll tell you, one of the most clever
just
things.
to make it sound better.
I saw something really clever in England a number of years ago. There's a streaming platform there. I think it's called Deezer.
Yep, Deezer.
And they did a cross promotion with Pringles potato chips. The ones that come in the tube. And because somebody had done some video or something where they showed how you could take a Pringles tube and make a couple of alterations to it and put your iPhone or whatever phone you had that we were streaming off of, and you could suddenly turn the tube of the Pringles can into a bit of a speaker and get a better, bigger audio quality out of your Deezer, right?
Yeah.
And so they did this thing, that you got 3 free months of Deezer if you bought this can of potato chips, and then there was instructions on the
How to
tube
use it.
on how to set this up so you could hear the better quality audio with your potato chips.
Right. They had a guy on Shark Tank that actually came up with a device that clips on the back of your phone that cups the speakers to make it come back at you, and it actually was like, I don't know, like $10-15. So it's like a little niche thing.
Yeah, I saw one in the store the other day. It was kind of like a bubble, and you put your phone in there, and this echo chamber or whatever causes the audio to come out deeper and richer so you can hear it. So, I mean, there are solutions and that sort of thing. But getting back to the point of what we're saying, streaming services, they're here to stay. And we've learned to use them as a tool to help advance the artists and that sort of thing. So I honestly think that in the next 5 or so years, you will see 3 major corporations dominate the music industry, and it'll be a combination of Spotify and Amazon and Apple, and somewhere along the way, people will keep getting bought out, and they'll be the ones running the music industry as far as getting the content out to the people. So,
and hopefully album sales will go even higher.
well, I think album
physical
sales
album.
are going to keep going down.
Well, they're actually really high right now.
Well, they're not.
Well,
they're really not. They're not. And streaming numbers are going up and up and up. In fact, a lot of people don't even realize this. Everybody has heard about the charts, the Billboard charts, and where I was number 1 on Billboard and all that crap. Well, the thing that you don't realize, or most people don't realize these days, is that they had to change the formula because so much of the music was being consumed via streaming that they had to add that into the formula. It wasn't fair not to. So I'm not sure off the top of my head what the numbers is, but it's like something like every 7 streams or every 10 streams or whatever that you get is the equivalent in the charts of selling an album. So if you had 1 million streams, then it's like selling 100,000 records, and that's going to affect your chart placing. And that's just the way it works now. So bottom line is, streaming's here to stay. Embrace it or die. So, in the meantime, I wanted to thank Sean and Mark and Emma and everybody here for participating in this show. And I want to thank all of you out there for your continued support of the show. You can head on over to the patreon.com platform and check out our after hours show after this and see what shenanigans we get up to there. And if you want to send us any feedback, you can send emails to acetalksmusic@gmail.com, or just leave comments in whatever platform you're experiencing this show in. We love to hear from you, and we'd love to hear what things you like, what you don't like, maybe what you'd like to see us talk about in the future. In the meantime, everybody take care of yourself, and we'll see you again real soon.